Hi, I need to introduce myself. My name's Becky. I am a physical therapist. I'm also a mom and family member, and most importantly, I am a Christian. And I want to share with you some things that I have learned in my time as a physical therapist, mostly when I was working with kids. I want to start with how much I learned, where God has guided my steps. And I'll tell you how he did that. First, I want to establish that, Jesus does have the authority. He says in Matthew 28:18, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything as I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, even to the end of the age. When we hear the words bubbles, what first comes to mind? I mean, I think of little kids' parties, getting bubble ones out and little bubbles bottles, and kids jumping around, watching them float, just having fun. We want to see they may run after them to pop them themselves or just wait until they pop on their own. Usually has a lot of giggling and just overall perkiness. We also can think of a bubbling brook, which again has nice connotations. And can also think about when somebody is giggling, or even thinking of Glinda, the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz, as she floats around in her big bubble. If you want to get a little more serious about this, we can also think of things like the housing bubble and tech bubble, all this stuff. Things that like are real good for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're done and over with, and things start going bad. So decided I needed to look up that from that great sage Google, and what does bubble mean? So according to Merriam-Webster, a bubble is a small globule that is typically hollow and light, such as a small body of gas. And then, of course, I wondered what the Bible had to say about it, and so I consulted Google again, and it didn't have anything at all directly related to bubbles. But I did find out that the Hebrew word that is used for prophet is, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, but is nabi, which literally means to bubble up. And it says, suggesting that a prophet's words are spiritual declaration bubbling up from within. Okay, so we all know what we're talking about with a bubble. Now let me tell you how I've used it as a physical therapist. For most of my life, or most of my professional career, I use bubbles as a way to kind of get to know kids. When you're working with little toddlers, babies, you're also dealing with a lot of stranger anxiety and just, don't want to get too close to this new person. You never know what they're going to do, and they would just bury into their mom or their dad's chest, and just make sure nothing bad was going to happen. Appropriate. So the way I would get to kind of get to know them is I'd start blowing bubbles. And so they might, have their head away, but pretty soon they might see a bubble float by, and mom or dad would always like start pointing to the bubbles and trying to lean the babies to the bubbles so that they could start getting interested and catch them. And pretty soon, usually within the first visit, they would start reaching out for those bubbles, and or at least they'd start looking and get more interested. And then you'd see the parents or caregivers always try to like find a way to wave the bubbles back into the baby's eyesight. And eventually they'd start reaching for a bubble, and they would start being able to move, and we could get more engaged this way. These were great for fussy ones, and again, eventually it would start turning them to just get more and more interested in me. But then I could get to the point where I could blow a bubble, and on those good days I could actually catch the bubble and hold it out just so in front of the baby so that they might reach for it. And eventually I could place it farther and farther out so they reach a little farther and a little farther. And each bubble took them to doing more and more and investigating what more and more life there was. This was a much better thing than for me to use a toy. So if I wanted to take a baby and get them moving, I could place an actual toy, usually like a little car or something. I'd place it out to the side and the baby would crawl over to it or lean to it, pick it up and play with it. Well, for me to be able to get that baby to move, I have to take that toy away and place it a little farther. It would work probably about 2 to 3 times and then the baby was over it. It's like, no, you're taking it away from me, so why even bother with it? So I found out Bubbles was a great way to bridge that gap because they knew the bubble was going to pop, so they weren't disappointed and they just waited for the next one. They knew another one was coming and then another one. So yeah, I used a lot of Bubbles and any chance I can. I've worked with adults in the hospital. Usually doesn't work quite so well, and in the hospital I don't think they want Bubbles stuff all over. Okay, so several years ago I got thinking about how God blows bubbles for us to follow. He made us. He has an idea what he wants to do and what he wants us to do. It's going to fit with how we're made. And so he blows these little bubbles for us. And each of these bubbles are meant for us and only us until we say, no, we don't want it. And God gives us that right to say, no, we don't want it. Doesn't mean our life is going to be harder or worse or better. It's just probably not going to be optimal. So there were different times, in life that I'd look at something like, wow, what that person's doing, that looks really great, but then I could say, wait, God has my bubble for me. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's their bubble. I need my bubble, and I will do that. Wasn't always big, wasn't always grandiose. I may be like one of 2 people that ever knew that I did this thing of following the bubble that was blown for me. But I did it. And each time it would build on another one and another one. Right now, I don't have any idea if any of these things that I did, if they had a bigger impact on somebody's life than I saw. Maybe I'll find out in heaven. Yeah, that time I walked out the door and looked around because I felt God was telling me to do that right then. I don't know. Maybe I scared away a robber or maybe it was just somebody needed to see a face out on a dark night. Don't know, but could be. Some of these bubbles could be paying for a person behind you at a drive-through. They could be complimenting somebody that looks like they're having a bad day. But I just want to finish up by saying Jesus does blow our bubbles and takes us places. It says in Genesis 1:29-30 that he lays out just what he did to provide food and care for us. Then God said, I give every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, on the plant. Oh, sorry, I'm reading this, trying to get it just right. Okay, give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. And then he also goes on to say in Genesis 2, 5-7, no shrub had yet appeared on earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth. There was no one to work the ground, but streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed air into his nostrils, the breath of life, and the man came into being. So I don't know about you, but when I think of the person who made us, who designed us, he knows what he's doing when he tells us or hints for us to maybe do something specifically. Because then he says in Hebrews 2:16-18, for surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason he had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a more merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people, because he himself suffered when he was tempted. He's able to help those who are being tempted. So again, he was there when we got started, and I think he can give us a lot of good going forward. Okay, and I just want to finish up with that ultimate reason that he does have the authority to be the author of our lives. In Psalms 139, starting at verse 13, he says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your words are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden for you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. He's invested in our creation, so he's invested in what we're going to do. And I don't think anybody wants somebody looking at their creation and go, ooh, yeah, that didn't work right. So I think he wants to be able to say, yeah, I want people to look at my creation and go, yeah, that's one he wants to say, good and faithful servant. I can believe in a God who would make something good. And also in the book of Esther, because she was called on to help save her people because they were about to be annihilated. And her uncle, Mordecai, helped spur her to action for this because he had told her, go to the king, tell him your people are about to be killed. And she's like, oh, but he could kill me if he doesn't like what I have to say. His response to her was, when Esther's word, and you can find this in Esther 4:12-14, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the jewels will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. So now we know he's the author of our lives. And he probably has the best idea how to orchestrate everything together. Going back to Eden and going forward all the way to Revelation. Also, I do want to hand out an opportunity to say that I have heard somebody, on social media put out there that they heard that all these Christians have Bibles and they say this is all great, and they say, but nobody ever offered me a Bible. Nobody said, here, have a Bible. So he figured we Christians wanted to keep it to ourselves, want to keep all the secrets, all the benefits that we think we have. to ourselves. So I just want to put out this offer that if nobody's ever offered you a Bible, you put a comment, and I will be more than happy to get in touch with you and see about providing you with a Bible. Have a great day and a great new year. Thanks. Bye.